Welcome to the OTech Talks podcast, where it's all about working on Oracle technologies. You will hear the latest Oracle tech information, and your host, Kashif Manzoor, brings together product overviews, how-tos, best practices, tips and tricks, and troubleshooting techniques.
Today we have a guest speaker, Dave Sobel, and he is running his own tech podcast, and he's also owner of MSP Radio. And frankly, being a newbie to the podcasting, and I'm believing that I'm going to learn from Dave today a lot. And then, as he has a background in managed services and he runs this show to support this area, so we will learn and have a lot of questions to Dave. So, if Dave, you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure, Kashif, thanks for having me. I'm Dave Sobel. I am the host of the Business of Tech podcast, available on anywhere you listen to podcasts or YouTube if you prefer it on video, where I focus each day. I do a podcast every single day on news that you need to know if you deliver IT services or deliver managed services. And I ask the question, why do we care? To try and put the story into some kind of context. I've been doing this about 4 years. I love doing it. I'm having so much fun. And it's a top 50 tech news podcast, #1 among managed services providers. And before that, I come from the space. So I owned a managed services provider for about a decade. And I also worked for 2 software companies delivering software to managed services providers.
All right. So you have plenty of knowledge on managed services.
Yeah, okay. I think a lot about that. I mean, it's a fascinating space. The idea of delivering technology services to other companies. You know, oftentimes you kind of find yourself in one of 2 realms, right? Like if you're you're either in an IT department or you're with a company that doesn't, or that can't support one, isn't large enough, doesn't need it, or needs help. And it's those IT outsourcing companies or the ones that deliver managed services that I think about. My favorite stat in this space is for every $1 of revenue that Microsoft does, they do $8 through their partners. So like Microsoft, for every $1 you're in Microsoft's books, $8 goes through their partners. And that's the space I like to think about.
All right. Now, I think before my current job, I was also doing the part of the managed services contracts, and we used to even host it on data centers at that time, which now became the clouds and all that. So it's true. And we were running the entire show of the customers. So it could be irrespective of the technology. So you're not bound to any tech, what customer is using it. Whatever customer is using from X to Z technology, you need to run that as a managed service contract. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's fantastically dynamic, so that you'll deal with different customers, different needs. You're trying to do your best job to standardize that, to make your business as efficient as possible, yet at the same time deliver bespoke services and custom projects and all the customizations that your customers needs. And so there's all kinds of really interesting tensions that go into delivering that service.
Okay. So then let's start with with the scenario of having a managed services contracts. As with the IT landscape is keep changing, and based on the country or maybe region, sometime there is a shift that outsource, and then suddenly you see that outsourcing or giving a managed services contract is not good, bringing back to inside your company. So how you see the shift is happening over the years?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of cyclical, but I mean, I tend to focus on certain fundamentals that always make sense. And I think for most businesses, they need to focus very closely on what they are competent in and what their core competence is. And for most businesses, there's large swaths of IT that are not their core business. And it will look different, right? It'll look different for every single customer. So if we go out to, a law practice, for example, right? Most of technology, not going to be their core competency. And that's where it's very clear you should outsource as much as possible. The more technical the customer gets, potentially the more that they're going to want to have some internal resources, but there's always going to be a need for stuff they don't do well or that is not capable of using with full-time employees. And that's where I look and say, you're going to want to have some kind of relationship that allows you to scale those components of the business up. And I think it's really that core business is always there. The fluctuations tend to come from either changes in industries or changes those individual business. So for example, a business may become more technical or may invest more in technology, and they may want to have control of some of those elements in the business. So they'll bring some of it back, potentially some of it back inside. But it's hard, right? Like it's really hard in a world where you're constantly looking for technical talent. And you're going to have a lot of additional bits, particularly if we layer, say, security on top of all that. There's just a lot of expertise that you can't keep in house, and at best, you're not even going to know how to manage. So that's really good to outsource.
Okay, so from a customer point of view, as my audience are more on technology side, and they are CIOs or the IT managers or CTOs. So what are the top tips or maybe recipes you can suggest them while selecting any managed services partner?
So I think I think the number one criteria that anyone should be using to work with this is how well they mesh with your organization based on how they are able to measure success. And what I mean by that is oftentimes I use a good, better, best model when I talk to providers to help them understand the way to measure success. And if we think about technology, right, we all got to have it, right? You kind of got to keep the computers running. There's a certain element of, say, backup services or core security services, stuff that you just have to have. And they live in a profit and loss statement. They're going to live down in administrative costs, right? They're going to live all in that line items. They're going to sort of tuck themselves in next to insurance and rent and pens and paper and those sort of things. They live down in SG&A. And from a technology provider perspective, delivering services there is good. And I think for an end customer, if they're able to serve in that space, that's good. Better are those that are able to talk about impacting your cost of goods sold, the cost of the business that is delivering your own service. So, say you're a CIO of a mid-sized manufacturing organization. You're going to be looking and saying, well, how can I do things to cut cost in the delivery of our technology? I'm a manufacturer. I want to make the processing line go faster. I want to use technology to reduce headcount there. If you can live in that cost of goods sold, that's better. But best, and the best match for both sides is when we're able to match that against revenue. And when we're able to actually use technology to drive more. Again, in my example, in my mid-sized manufacturing firm, if you're able to actually help drive more revenue, that's e-commerce, that's production line capabilities, that's whatever it is that drives top-line revenue, that's the best. And you should be able to measure the provider you're talking to about their ability to talk business to your profit and loss statement. And I think that's the number one area that if you're selecting a provider, you want to gauge them based on their ability to talk to you about your business.
Okay. So now I have seen two school of thoughts while they give the contracts to the managed services provider. They are bothering about the resources or the talent which they will get as part of the project. And one sort of people says that, okay, you forget about the talent, whatever they will bring, this is their responsibility. Now, another type of people, they said, no, we want to interview those talents, what they're bringing to my project or to my company. And I want to make sure that they are capable while doing it. So how do you see what being practiced and what is benefit for both of the parties?
They're both great. Right. And because we're always on the search for one answer, right? There is one best way to do it.
Right.
No, there isn't. There's a million different ways to do this. And it's going to differ based on the business goals, the business itself, the culture of the organization, how they're fitting in, what the talent is they need, what the need is. There's just all of these great criteria that you're going to measure against, and you're going to measure based on the success that way. For example, if we talk about a project and you're bringing in talent to augment existing talent, where you're going to work collaboratively together, you're probably going to lean far more into understanding the people that are being brought. Are they the right fit? Are they a good culture fit? Are they going to work well with you? Are they going to mesh with your team? You're going to lean far more into that. But the other side of this is you might be hiring just simply for results. I'm hiring them to go forth and deliver this list of services or deliver against this project deliverables. And frankly, I want the outsourcer to be great at that and just figure out what they need and go forth and be successful. And the more I get involved in the people selection, I'm probably slowing them down. So the answer is both, and it's situational. And so I'm not going to prefer one or the other. What I'm actually going to tell, the CIOs, CSOs, or whoever we're talking to here, I'm going to say, I want you to really understand how you measure success. Because the more you can measure your success and understand it, the better choices you're going to make on a decision like that.
Okay. Then while I was doing it, another challenge which I observed it, both sides, as either customers or maybe as the managers or providers, the expectation. You signed something as an initial contract, but when it comes to delivery, both have their own expectation. So how to match that one? What is your experience says on that?
Yeah, we get this one wrong all the time, don't we? and what's funny about this is that it often comes down to two real simple ideas. The first is at the beginning of the project, it's really hard to define what success is. And some people may not have leaned into enough of that. And the second is that we're not disciplined about managing the changes that come in over the course of that. Projects change. They just do, right? And you've got to do a great job through the process of setting expectations and resetting the expectation every time. And that may mean change orders. That's going to mean, changes to scope, redefinition. You're going to have to do a really good job all along the entire process. When I counsel, I spend a lot of my time counseling providers, and I'm going to highlight this as one of those areas that you would better be good at. But by the way, customers, I actually, we're talking to your listeners now who are more customers. Some of this is on you. Some of this is on you to own the fact that you do need to be good at communicating and documenting your own expectations. That if you're not clear and an involved participant along the entire way, you're probably going to get to the end of a project and it's not going to go the way you wanted it to.
Right.
And it's real easy to sort of say, well, it's all the consultants' fault or all the outsourcers' fault. Okay, great. We're still in a bad situation at the end of this, and you still needed a deliverable, and you're still wasting time. The more you're going to buy into that, into more the managing the process yourself, the happier you're going to be. And I really think this is really important because it's my experience that we all in business, we oftentimes think there's far too many things that we think are secret or our leverage point or some magic secret sauce. And it's been my experience that customer relationships where they put that aside and they really invest in this as a joint partnership are the ones that are most successful, where it's just about the free flowing of information and then doing a really good job of documenting the entire time.
Right. Okay, and thank you so much for that suggestion. Now, let's go to maybe a delivery side of that. Now, there is some guy who's delivering this managed services project, right? Now, maybe as a part of the vendor, he's now on the customer side. And I think for all the positive, negative, he is managing it. He's responsible for that one. And sometimes we see it that he's a between the customer and as in his own organization vendor. So he's like a sandwich between two parties, and he's struggling to pass to whatever the customer is saying, getting the same from his company as a vendor one. So how and his role is becoming a more important and critical to manage both the parties to make sure that what service is providing to customer, he can maintain it, and then he should get support from vendors organization. What I observed is both sides there are mismatch of expectation could be. Now, what are the some points or tips for this guy who is managing the show to do his job?
Well, so it's funny because I would start with the person in that role needs to really understand that they are much more of a manager and a people and process manager than they are a technical one. And oftentimes, it's important for organizations to know that just because you have great technical skills does not necessarily make you a good project manager, or does not necessarily evolve you into somebody that can do that coordination. Those are skills that can be taught and their skills can be learned, but they're not the same. And it's my experience, and this is on both sides. This is on both customers and in outsourcers, and on both sides, is I don't think there's enough investment in the people skills required to be really effective here. Is there's a bit of an assumption that that they've got experience, or they've come up through a project. And in fact, the organizations that do really well are the ones that invest in their people to keep that process going really well by having the right skills to be great project managers. And I would say for the person who is an individual, they're looking for tips on that, they're going to want to lean into learning project management and learning all of the skills of that. And by the way, that is generally simplified into over-communicate. It is a lot of spending time communicating on both sides. And you're smiling, right? We smile and laugh about it. But the reason we do is because it's a hard-learned lesson that oftentimes is assumed. Like we just sort of, that's the thing. But actually, we have to make sure that we don't overly assume it, and we do make sure that that is the core skill. More than anything else, it's that. And so I would tell that person, lean into that.
Right. And I agree to your point that most of the time you're observing that the tech focus or the tech folks are getting these roles that, he can be a project manager, or maybe he's going to manage my entire show. And then he's just growing up that he's learning that skill. Maybe it's not there, which need to be there to maintain the relationship between both parties. And I 100%, from your experience sharing point of view is right. Now, so we covered some of the part from a customer side. Now let's go to the vendor side of the area. So how vendors now getting the projects? So usually as the sales cycle goes, I need to get a project, I need to get it. And once he got it, then he also got into a relaxation mode. And then he started forgetting that why he got the project, right? And why he got this customer. So maybe his P&L is fine. He got a target of 10 million that, in 1 year, my contract. But then he started forgetting entirely how to run the customer show. So maybe based on your experience, what should be those vendors, some of the traits they need to learn, or maybe they need to change themselves?
So let's do a quick buzzword check here, because your use of the word vendor and my use of the word vendor in my world are actually, I think, different. And I want to make sure that I'm using correctly. Because what we were just talking about is so in this case, the customer is defined as the organization that is purchasing IT services. And so you've defined vendor as the one delivering those IT services. Right. And I want to clarify that, because in my world, well, of course, that's the service provider. Who, by the way, also has vendors. The vendors are on there. So in my world, the vendors are generally the software providers or the technology providers. So that could be Microsoft or Amazon or Google or HP. And so it's just, it's one of those moments where we all have to check our buzzwords, right? So your use of vendor, got it. Totally makes sense. Yeah, again, this
service provider.
Yeah, service provider. But by the way, and I'm making kind of a humorous point here also to say, like, hey, all of us in technology, we use a lot of loaded terms.
True.
And it is really important that we take a moment and always make sure we're using the word in the same way. Because you can miscommunicate really easily and lose a lot of subtlety if we don't agree on the terminology, because we'll use the same word in 5 different places in our industry. Now, to your question, where again, I think it's really about understanding, again, what I said earlier, the idea of understanding what the outcome is. If you've done a really good job as an outsourced provider is delivering to that customer in defining what success looks like, then you're going to be able to clearly measure against that. Even it changes to the project as it goes along. You really need to understand, in your heart of hearts, what success looks like for this customer. And the less you do that, the more you risk wandering into this space that you've just alluded to, where you've lost track of that. And it's you want to be very, very clear as to what success looks like. And I think more than anything, that's where I see projects that go very well, is when that is very clearly defined and we know what we're going to measure success by. And this can be done at all different stages of the project. We can do it at large sense of what, the entire scope of the project, or if we're using something like agile in the way that we're thinking about developing, we can do it in an agile, in a sprint. We know what success looks like. And the more you focus on defining that, I think the more successful you are, and it keeps that alignment really strong.
Right. And a very, very well point. Now, being in a managed services business, the key component in the entire show is the talent, is the workforce, right? So how the vendors are making sure that they need to have the right talent and it's aligned to that project success, or a service provider. So I think, which is based on my observation, is this is quite neglected part. That, okay, as a service provider, I invested a lot to get that contract to run a managed services, but then I started compromising on the talent which I need to give to make sure that the show is running. So maybe some insight to it.
It depends, right? So it often on the managed services side, for those of us that deliver managed services, we're very actually focused less on and when we do it well, we're focused less on delivering people and more on business outcomes. So like one of the classic managed services that we deliver is the idea of sort of outsourced network and security management, right? That we're going to take over that. And ideally, you as a customer should never have to worry about the talent at all. Right. We should be able to deliver as managed service providers. We should be able to deliver business outcome based deliverables where we're delivering a level of uptime, responsiveness, delivery of service level objectives, for example, that we're able to show you the level that we're striving to deliver response times within 5 hours. We're trying to have ticket resolutions, first touch for ticket resolutions in 4 hours. Whatever those objectives look like. That should be how we're measured of success. And ideally, and the reason we do it that way as providers is that helps separate that talent problem from your measurement.
Right.
I don't want you to worry about if it's Jane or Jack delivering that service. I just want you to know the phone when you call in, the issue is going to get resolved in a very dependable kind of way. And that's the more that the providers invest in that process, the better it's going to go, right? Is delivering on the back of being good at process. I oftentimes like looking, a good managed services shop is going to have multiple levels of technologists, tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s, have very clear delineation of responsibility, and they're going to insulate the customer from any kind of level of people churn. And that's when you're doing it really well. And I would sort of push back and say, if you're feeling that as a customer, if you're feeling the talent problem, you might not be working with the best provider, because a good provider is going to separate that out from you so that you're not having to think about that.
I agree, and I agree to that one. That being a manager is my responsibility to deliver the service and the business outcome, whatever I signed for it. And then the man.
And we very much want it to be separated from people because when we do that well, it actually makes the people management even easier. So that's the kind of the magic and the secret sauce over on the provider side is when we're good at process like that, we can actually insulate a little bit from disparities in people and have a very much more a coordinated team effort rather than, again, I as the service provider do not want you dependent on Janie, as that particular person that delivers it, because that delivers inconsistent service and that's not good for me as the provider.
True. Right. So now I think let's move to how you started your podcast show. I mean, 4 years back, this is what you mentioned, right?
Yeah. So my journey is funny. So I'm technical by background.
Right.
As a degree in computer science, like if you'd ask college me, I'd be a product person. But I shifted over into delivering services after a couple of late 90s startups and had a really good run at it and was very much a student of that. So learned a lot about the delivery of managed services, how it's done well, how the business model works, what are all the key elements for success. And I did all the kind of community things. And I sold that business and then wanted to continue learning. So I went to what on my side of the world we would call the vendor side, which was software products that support us as service providers. So if you're doing like a network managed, if you're doing a network managed service, you need some software tools that do that. And I worked for 2 different companies for a period of time. So I had 10 years as a provider and another 8 years as a software vendor serving that space. And for me, it's all kind of the intellectual learning process. And I said, I want to help with more education in this space. And my key metrics of success as a software vendor was the more we taught people to be good providers, the more software they bought.
Right.
That was how I was measured in success. And so I became a good educator from that perspective. And I looked at my space and I said, you know what? I think there's a need for good educational content that helps those managed services providers, IT outsourcers, IT services companies run better businesses and look at the trends in technology and analyze them better because it's a tough business. It's really hard, a lot to keep up with. And I said, I think I can do a really good job of doing that analysis for them. And I can present it in a really interesting media way. And I can build a business by also monetizing that audience. And I don't mind saying there's honor in advertisement, is because you don't mind ads when they're relevant. Right. They're like a product or services that are uniquely related to what you're delivering. So I said, I can combine both sides. I was a good managed service provider. I was a good vendor and understood how to message to them. Let me mash that all up, build an interesting daily business podcast that focuses on the IT services delivery, and I will sell some ads. And that's what I do now. And so it's a media company, 4 years strong, where I'm combining the two, a really good set of content that engages the audience that they want to listen to. And then I'm helping those software vendors get their message out to that audience by placing ads in my show.
Okay. And it's a daily show.
It is. I do 6 shows a week. So I do a podcast every single business day, which is covering 2 to 4 stories and a segment called Why Do We Care? So I put some wrapper around that to help you understand why I selected the story and why I think it's important, what trend it speaks to or what the opportunity is. And on the weekends, I do interview episodes and have guests on about areas that I want to learn about as somebody exploring IT services. And my thought has always been that, well, if it's interesting from that perspective to me, I suspect it's going to be interesting to my audience too to learn. So I do interview episodes on the weekend. So 6 shows a week.
Oh, okay. That's quite a lot of commitment.
It is. It's great fun. I always feel like I'm learning, and it's great fun to serve the audience. I respond all the time to questions from listeners and what they're looking for me to understand more or examine for them or learn more about and come back and examine is great fun. So it's kind of a two-way street.
Right. No, I started maybe 6-7 years back, but on and off because and the motive was that, okay, I will learn something. So whatever I was doing in my day-to-day, and I was coming back and I started recording it.
Yep.
And the only reason, and that was keep pushing me, that, okay, whenever I was doing a solo show, I was learning something because I have to practice that one and then I need to come and then I need to present to someone. So that was giving me a lot of, and I think from last maybe 6 months or so, I started talking or inviting the guests. Otherwise, I was doing it myself. And I'm just thinking again, to go back and start mixing it. I think because that gives you more, the way you were said that you need to prepare the story, then it's when you're investing time on certain topic which you have.
I love it from that perspective. I'm very story driven on my show. I like understanding what's going on, and then making an analysis to see what is the opportunity. So I'll give you an example. I talk a ton about AI right now. Shocking, right? Like everyone's talking AI. But one of the things that I think is most interesting right now is the space of AI frameworks, is understanding the ethical and business implications of applying AI to problems. Because for me, as thinking about service providers, that's a great opportunity.
Right.
That's where the end customer needs going to be, is you need help. And there's a million different frameworks out there right now, right? There's ones popping up for industry. As we're recording, where the Biden administration has released their executive order. I mean, I haven't even dug into it yet, right? So we've got a new one that the Fed's going to be using. We've got ones that, the Pentagon's got theirs, like you can do the federal versions of it. There's commercial versions of it. You've got the banking associations put one out. There's a healthcare one, and I look and go, wow, that kind of complexity, helping customers navigate through that's a great offer. Like that's exactly what we as service providers should be doing to help our customers. Totally fascinating. And so looking at all of those moves is something that I've been covering on the show.
No, that's true. And then in the first and second number, I think UK is hosting another AI safety conference by the UK government. So everywhere is coming on that one. And from an AI point of view, even, I mean, wherever you go to customers in any meeting, right now on every meeting, boardroom, everywhere you see, you need to talk about an AI. You need to find the use case, how the generative AI is going to help or not help. That's where
or not. But by the way, we laugh or not help, and being able to actively explore something and saying this is not the correct application. That's important. And by the way, that has to be guided, and that has to be guided by principles to understand why it wasn't a good match. That's not just to fly by the seat of our pants, go with our gut. Like having thought through the why of application, where it's appropriate, where it isn't appropriate, there's real significant value here. Organizations should be investing in it. And I've been advocating that this is a great match to service providers to help out.
And I can relate to you the way you said stories. I mean, whoever I'm meeting, if he's working in a finance or a supply chain or HR in any technology field, he started asking, okay, what is for me? What is for me in a use case? Can you show me the use case? Can you tell me the use case? And sometimes I feel it that, okay, there is no use case for you in certain topic. I don't see it, or maybe I need to go and read McKinsey or Deloitte or what they are bringing, or a Gartner, or they are bringing those use cases. But then I come back to him and I said, man, I'm sorry, there's nothing. I could not find it. But then he said, no, I need to get something because I need to show to someone that I'm doing something in Gen AI. So, but coming back to your point, that it's also very important that concluding it, that, okay, there is nothing for me, or there's for any use case.
Right. It's okay to say no. An active decision to say no is entirely appropriate.
True.
And I advocate for that. It's the considered, thoughtful no versus the, without thought, without analysis that we want to push back against. But by the way, getting to know is okay. It's a perfectly acceptable outcome.
Right. And I think another one, I think I was working with a TM forum as a working group on ML ops. So everywhere, the new framework, the way you mentioned it, those are coming, and it's impacting. It's going to impact even the way we are doing business or the way we are working. Either it's managed services or not managed services. Right. Everywhere it's getting.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's a fun, creative time, and that's it's one of the best impacting technologies I've looked at in a while. I was super skeptical of a lot of other ones that have come through recently. This is one that's got me excited again, and it's the okay, I see the applications, I see where the usefulness is for customers, and a lot of use cases do spill out pretty fast.
True. Thank you so much for joining. So if audience want to reach out to you, maybe you want to share your show name, where it is available, how we can reach out to.
I am super easy to find. So my show's on all the major podcast platforms. Wherever you listen, you can find me. Links are at businessof.tech. Additionally, every story I post comes out on the show every day. If you want it in your email box, there's a daily digest. So you can get all the stories in your inbox every day. But the podcast drops 5 p.m. Eastern every single day. So you can get 5 to 7 minutes worth of news and insights on a daily basis. Again, find me at businessof.tech.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you so much joining for the Open Tech Talks. Lovely talking to you after a long time on the managed services.
Kashif, this has been great fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
At otechtalks.tv, it's a turf to share ideas, insights, and innovations.